So I thought it would just be useful to go through some of the process and highlight some of the key points, and then I'll take any questions at the end. So I won't make this long. Now, Federico showed this lovely graphic earlier about that describes the big data platform and about the process between data upload all the way through to data analysis. So I just wanted to drill down into some of these things just to highlight what I think are a few key points. And again, Geordie showed this process. So I'm not going to go through this in detail, but obviously before any data provider provides information to Harmony, you have to sign a data sharing agreement. You then have to prepare a data dictionary, which Geordie mentioned, which basically is just a description of all the variables in your data set. Quite a detailed one, and it does take a bit of time, but it's not a huge task. And then you can prepare the data in various formats, and then you submit the data to this trusted third party. And then once that is done, they then pass the data onto the platform. So the legal agreements that you need to set up as a data provider are listed here. Now, at first glance, this looks horrendous, right? But if your data set has come from a well-documented study or a clinical trial, the information that goes into these things is relatively trivial and is, it's a couple of hours work to fill this in, although at first glance, it seems like a huge amount of work. But trust me, it's not once you get to grips with it. So the other thing that to remind everyone is you do get reimbursement for the data that you submit to Harmony. So Harmony does not pay for data, but it does reimburse you for the effort that you have gone into in collecting that data. So the data sharing agreement will outline the maximum amount that the data provider can receive, be reimbursed for that data. And the amount of the reimbursement is based on the data dictionary, right? So this is why it's important to describe the data set clearly. And essentially on the right-hand side here, it gives you an example about how they come up with this amount. And essentially, depending on what kind of data you've got, be it demographic data, genomic data, etc., your data set basically gets awarded points. And then at the end, you have a percentage. So in this particular example, it's 72%, right? So it means that you will then get a maximum of 72 euros per record. So this is per patient. So if you've got 1,000 patients in your data set, that's 72,000 euros, okay? So that's not a trivial amount of money. And although it does take time to put these data sets together, when you do get the money back from Harmony, you suddenly realize that you've got enough money to, if you've submitted several thousand patient cases, you've got enough money to employ someone for a few years. So it does have some serious benefit to do this. This is an example of the data dictionary. It's all done in an Excel spreadsheet, and it's all, you get this template from Harmony, and basically it's a very detailed description of every single variable in your data set and what the name is, what it means, what values it can take, all the coding, etc. Now, this particular bit does take some time, right? But the thing to remember is if your data set comes from, say, a clinical trial or a study, then in theory, you should have gone through this process when you were collecting the data. And if you had a decent data management plan, this is all basically done. So all it does is formalize all those rules about making sure that all the males are coded as 1 and the females are coded as 2. It just formalizes it all into a structure that Harmony can process. So although it is a reasonable chunk of work, it's not that difficult to do. It can be a bit painstaking sometimes, but it is hugely important. And the reason why it's important is because the Harmony needs to be able to map your data onto what is called the Observational Medical Outcome Partnership Standard, or OMOP. And this basically generates a common data model. And it means that data that I submit from the UK can be analyzed alongside data submitted by Geordie from Spain and alongside data that's been submitted from, Germany and Italy. And if you don't have the data in a common data model on your platform, then effectively you can't analyze it in any meaningful way. And this is really what gives Harmony its power, is the fact that it can take data from multiple different sources into a common model that can then be analyzed. And that's why the data dictionary is so important. So in terms of, once you've described your data, then you can submit as many different files as needed. So this is hugely important, because I've had this question from a lot of potential data providers. There is no requirement to consolidate all your data into a single file. Harmony will do that for you. As long as you describe the data, they can pick up the individual files and they will be mapped onto the common data model easily, okay? Well, I don't know about easily, but the point is they'll do it. You don't, as data providers, you don't have to do it, right? That's the important bit. And the file types that are accepted by the trusted third party are standard files, Excel, CSV. These are not difficult files to deal with, right? So there's nothing, difficult about that. So the actual format of the data could really be as you have it now, as long as you describe it properly in the data dictionary. So what is the trusted third party? So the trusted third party is the linchpin in the data anonymization process. And Harmony have spent a huge amount of effort in coming up with this data harmonization process, and it's hugely beneficial. And this was one of the major questions, again, that I got when I was talking to potential data providers, is everyone was worried about data security and being able to identify patients on the platform. And so this process deals with that issue very effectively. And it means that the information on the data platform is anonymous. So there is no way from the data on the platform that you can identify that patient. So the process is called a two-step de facto anonymization process. What it means in practice is you have a trusted third party, right? And this is the University of Ulm in Germany. And as a data provider, you submit data to the trusted third party. What they do is they remove all the identifiers. You will have obviously removed all the really obvious ones, like the patient name and the date of birth and things like that. They will then remove your patient ID, right? So you will have a trial number or whatever it is to identify each of your patients uniquely. They will remove that number and insert their own number. And it is that second ID that is eventually put onto the Harmony platform. So once the data is on the Harmony platform, there is no identifiable date, there is no identifiable information, and there isn't even a unique patient ID that means anything to you or me. So all the patients I have submitted, once they're on the platform, I can't even tell who they are, right? Even though I have access to them on the data platform. So that is the process by which it works, and it hinges on there being a trusted third party to do that process. So the Harmony platform is based in Italy and the third party is in Germany. So there's a clear separation between these two groups. And as a data provider, you deal with the trusted third party or honest broker, as it says here. And that is how we assure that the data on the platform is anonymous. So once the data has been submitted to the trusted third party, it goes through a data quality assessment, and they check that the data that you have sent is as you described in the data dictionary. And then if you're like me, you get a list of all the errors in your data, which is hugely useful because it spotted quite a few errors in my data that I had absolutely no idea. They weren't serious errors, but they were simple things like the carrier type saying, had 46XX when, I had male down as in the sex field. So it was a very useful data check. I've never had my data checked like that before, but it was very useful. My list wasn't very long. It only took me, 20 minutes to resolve, but it was a very useful process. And then they send the data, once they have done that quality assessment, they send the data to GMV, who are the people that host the Harmony platform, and then they map it to this common data model. And this process can take quite a while, right? It's not a straightforward process. And once it is done, then it's the data then becomes available on the Harmony platform for analysis. So just to give you an idea about what the common data model looks like, this is a screenshot that Javier showed me recently. And essentially what they do is they take all your data and then they fit it on to this particular model. So this particular model, each one of these little boxes here is a different database table. And they have gone through all the basic patient experiences and observations that are possible. And then they map your data onto that single model. So all your observations will be shown by down here. All the deaths and the survival states will be in there. And then here you have a big chunk for sequencing data, etc. So all your data will then be formatted or mapped onto this data set, to this common data model. And once that is done, then your data is ready to be analyzed, okay? And so that's essentially where we're getting to very quickly with the ALL projects. What we have done now is we now starting to get access to the data platform. You have to request a user account and also a workspace on the Harmony platform. It's a very, very simple process. I did mine in a couple of minutes, and a couple of days later, I got my code, and you log in with a virtual private network, and you get a nice user space, and it works very, very smoothly. Slight word of warning, and something that I was a little bit surprised about, is that when you get onto the platform, you're not presented with, it's not like logging onto your bank account where someone shows you how much money you've got or how many patients you've got in your data set. What it does is it gives you a workspace, but that workspace, you still then have got some work to do. And this is where we are at it with my project at the moment, is that workspace allows you to do the informatic analysis. But in order to get that informatic analysis going, you have to be able to code in R or Python or some other computer or statistical language. So at the moment, what we're doing is we're working with GMV, and we're hoping that we'll be able to get some basic tools into that workspace that have been developed for some of the other disease pillars, so that we can start looking and analyzing our data in earnest, because we do have several thousand data sets on the platform already that are ready for analysis, and we need to start looking at it. So if you have any informatic analysis experience, or you would like access to the data platform to do some analysis, please do get in contact with me. And if there are several people that are interested in it, I suggest we start thinking about putting together a kind of users group, and starting to learn from each other about how we're going to work within this workspace, because there's no point reinventing the wheel. If I write well, I won't write any code, but if one of my team writes some code that does a particular thing, it seems illogical for everyone else to have to write the same bit of code. We might as well make sure that we share the space equitably, and we use the same code for the same kind of questions that we want to pose to the data set, and then we can build up a library of programs within the user space that will allow us to analyze this data meaningfully. But we probably do need a few people who really know what they're doing to kind of get us going. And at the moment, I am in conversation with the computer science department here at Newcastle University, and I'm hoping to get some computer science students engaged in this later on this academic year to start building this a kind of dashboard, so that when people log on, we get some basic information about the ALL data sets, like how many there are, how many data providers have provided it, how many cases of girls and boys, etc., that we have, so that the non-expert programmers like me can get a little bit of information about the data on the platform. So that's where we are at the moment. So we're a long way, we're much further on than we were last year, where we were really struggling to get people to sign up for the data sharing agreement. So it is working very well. So I'm going to end there and take any questions that anyone has got about anything that I've said today. So please put up your hand if you have any questions, or indeed, as there are only there are 20 of us on there, you can just unmute and ask your question. Anyone?
Maybe. So thank you. I think you made a really great summary of this long and sometimes difficult road about the data, but in any case, it's always to take as many guarantees for the patient anonymization as possible, because it is quite important. I have a question, maybe for the other talk, but maybe it's also for this talk. Is Anthony, imagine that you have now, let's say, 1,200 patients in the database. Which will be the first 3 analyses that you want to run with this structure? I'm telling this because I'm quite sure that we will reach 10,000 very soon, maybe even this in the next couple of weeks.
Okay, so that's, well, so the first thing I want to do is, in my first talk, I showed you about the prognostic index that we had developed and validated. So my number one thing to do is to validate that in additional data sets. So we had a discovery cohort, we had a validation one, which was very useful. I'm currently working on a paper where basically we're using that prognostic index in adult ALL in a cohort of 811 patients, and it's proving really useful. It validates exceptionally well beyond anything that I ever expected. And we're now drilling down in that adult cohort to see how we can use that to make the decision about whether or not to send patients to transplant or to chemo maintenance. But even with 811 patients, we're struggling with the numbers, okay? So I really need more adult ALL data sets who have had a transplant or not have a transplant to answer that question, right? Because I'm not going to be able to do it with UCAL14. As great as UCAL14 is, which is the ALL trial that I'm analyzing from the UK, it's just not going to be big enough to get a really solid answer. And I would love to have a clear-cut example about how you can use that prognostic index to make treatment decisions. So that would be my first job. The second job that I would do is, a second analysis would be to go back to the copy number alteration profile that we developed in the UK a couple of years ago now, and it was one of my bioinformaticians, Amir, who did the work on that. And we are now in the process of putting that into clinical practice in the Altogether Pediatric ALL trial. But I would very much like to see how that profile pans out in some other pediatric ALL protocols that before Harmony, I was not able to get my hands on, to be absolutely honest. I was very keen to get the data, but I didn't get the data. And one of them has just submitted their data. So that will be fantastic to be able to have a look at that. And the third analysis really is what Geordie's doing, because I think that is a very important question as to what is the role of Icarus deletions, particularly in relation to age, and also the Icarus Plus profile. I think is going to be very important. We have not managed to validate the use of Icarus and Icarus Plus in the UCAL14 cohort. We don't see any association with prognosis at all. And I don't understand why. And I don't have the access to the data sets at the moment. My theory is that it's in relation to age of the patient, which is why I asked Geordie what his lower age limit is because in the adult ALL data set that I'm analyzing, it starts at 25 and goes up to 65. And I strongly suspect that Icarus, and this is just my personal hypothesis, I haven't got any proof of this yet, is that Icarus is a strong prognostic factor in pediatric and adolescent ALL, but not adult ALL as defined by being over the age of 25. That's my hypothesis. And I would like to prove myself right. And I'm sure many other people would like to prove me wrong. But either way, I'd like an answer to the question, even if I'm wrong. I would still like an answer to the question.
It's science, you know. If you were working in COVID-19, you can tell whatever you can do, and this is
That's right.
Here we have to demonstrate.
Absolutely, it's research. If we knew what we were doing, we wouldn't have to do it. So that would be my first three questions. But of course, there are lots of others. I have an interest in older adults over the age of 65, and even simple things like what is the frequency of some of the genetic abnormalities, what's the role of MRD in that population, etc. So I think it could go on for a very long time, but they would be my top three. And I'm very glad that Geordie's doing number three. That means I only have to do two.
And your series, the series that you already upload to Harmony platform, it is pediatric adults or is a mixed series?
No, so the one I uploaded was the UCAL 2003 trial, which is it's the pediatric trial in the UK, but it does include patients up to the age of 24 because that's what it recruited. But I am working. Angela, who's on the call at the moment, is currently working through UCAL 12 in order to prepare those data sets for Harmony. That's an adult trial, which has got genetics and MLPA, but not MRD. And as soon as we've published UCAL 14, we will submit that. And it will be the UCAL 14 and some of the 12 that will feed into Geordie's project. So we've got another two data sets. And then in a couple of years' time, hopefully we'll be able to submit our UCAL 2011 trial. But we're a little bit off that because we haven't published it yet.
We definitively need adult patients.
Yes.
I hope that Jimena will help in this. And I also see Maria on the call, and maybe also Petema is going to. There is a question in the chat, Anthony.
Oh, yes. Marilla would like to ask if the data sets can be updated by the data providers at a later time point after they are uploaded. So the answer to that is yes and no. So they can't technically be updated because, of course, they're anonymous on the platform. But what will happen is if you did want to update your data set, what you would do is you would send it to the trusted third party. They would technically remove it from the data platform and then put a whole new one on. So yes, you can go through that process, but it's not actually an update process. It's a delete and replace process. But yes, you can. So it will work, and we think people will probably do that.
Yeah, perhaps I want to stress the need for the quality of data. So we need really more data in adults, it's clear, but yeah, we need really high quality data, because if we only have clinical data or basic biologic data, we will not reach any conclusion, because everything is set up to now. So the most important thing is to integrate the genetic background with the MRD in patients treated within clinical trials. So these are I think that the three most important things, no? Good clinical data, good clinical therapy, and good genetic data. And then we can have a good correlation, I am sure. So in PETEMA, we can send all these 250 patients with belonging to these three characteristics, because all of them will be studied from the MRD-based analysis, and also by the genetic schedule doing by validated techniques. So I think that other groups can help us, but it's very important to provide high quality data.
I agree, but we must always remember that we also need real data, because in the real world, we don't always have MRD for every single patient. We don't always have genetic for every single patient. And so we still need to have an idea about what we do with those patients. So I agree with you that the most informative is going to be when we have all of those, but we also must make sure that we collect data on patients that didn't have MRD and didn't have genetics, so that we can put that into the model and answer the really important question, well, if at the end of induction you don't have any MRD, but you do know the genetics, what are you going to do? And vice versa. So I think that you're right that it needs to be high quality, but it also needs to be real world, because at the end of the day, we need to apply our models not just to the patients that are in clinical trials with perfect data sets, but we need to make decisions on all the patients that are out there. So that's why I said at the beginning, it's very important to me that if you run a trial for 3 years and you collect 1,000 patients, I would argue you put all 1,000 patients on the Harmony platform, not just the 600 that you did MRD for. You want everyone. But yes, you're right that we will, of course, drill down to the MRD ones, but we also need to see how it will map out onto everyone. Because there'll be some patients that will unfortunately die before they get MRD done, and we need to know about them as well.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments or ideas?
If I may ask, sorry, if I may ask, it was more a general one. When we can think of setting up proposals, I mean, the data at some point, once it's united and assembled, it needs to be analyzed. And for imagining what data is there on the platform, would you should suggest that we get platform access first before we draw proposals, or would you? I mean, you need to think also how complete data is before you can create new proposals. So this is how complete data sets are. Otherwise, it's it can be futile. I mean, or would it be that we comment? I think just while creating good proposals, it would be nice to have some guideline how we can interact probably with you directly, or we should first do some some preparatory searches on the Harmony platform? How do you see it?
Yeah, so that's exactly what I would like to do. I would very much like to start scoping out over the next few months exactly what data is on the Harmony platform and ready to go, do some basic descriptive work on the variables, and then get have a meeting with the people who have provided data, and just show them that data, and then I would then say, right, if you want to do some analysis, what do you want to do? Anything else?
Just by curiosity, as you just mentioned it,
yeah.
Is there already a pre-assigned data analyst team?
Nope.
Or
not unless you've been hiding one, Jesus. I don't think I think it's up to us to find one.
I
very
think
well. We might. I'm sorry.
Basically, we are an open project in which
it's just
each team must be organized in regarding the project that they want to manage. So we have a supportive team in the building of the platform, which is the Work Package 3, GMB. And we also have a data analytics team also ready to help for much more in a bioinformatic approach. But we think that the best way to manage the data is just to join the people who is sharing this data. So it is the best way in which we can go on. Yeah. If PETEMA, if GMEMA, or if MRC is providing data, the logical follow-up will be to involve people from these three teams, or HOVON, let's say, so it doesn't matter. Yeah. So it is the main reason we are now building the different teams, and at any time also from the Work Package 1, from the coordination, we can also provide informatician trying to help, because the harmonization tool, the OMOP system, is really a powerful tool, but also is not so easy to be managed at the analytical level. So also it is important to be in touch with the people who is doing the OMOP characterization and so on. And I think Ana Heredia is also attending this room. Maybe she can provide some kind of, let's say, ideas about how also GMB people is involved in some of these teams. Anyone is involved, and anyone is invited to join, and because it is quite important to take all the ideas as possible. But don't forget that it will be the first time that we will be able to join more than 10,000 ALLs. In any case, and this is something that we have to manage, and this is the new ideas, this is new criteria, but this is the from my point of view, is the logical way to proceed.
Yeah. So if anyone has any bioinformaticians out there, get them to get in touch with me.
I will contact you if there's some support that we may provide from Essen.
I mean, obviously, what we if anyone did join, we wouldn't kind of abuse them or anything like that. They would be allowed to join to address their own research questions. It's important that we're not looking for slaves here. We're just looking for people who are interested and have the requisite skills.
I mean, there is a question for you. You are working in Essen, isn't it?
Yes.
And your series is mainly focused in adults or childhood?
It depends. So for the University Hospital Essen, we include the adults only.
Okay.
But there's also Professor Reinhardt on behalf of the childhood leukemia group. He's also set in Essen. I mean, this is somehow a coincidence, and he's providing data on the childhood leukemias.
You have both, and you have submitted the data coming from adults and now from childhood patients.
Well, technically, we have submitted them in a different framework. It was just it has for historical reasons because he joined first with a study group and the university hospital as an entity couldn't, of course, transmit the data through the study group because it's a pediatric study group.
Okay. But
our hospital joined as associated member then separately, exactly.
I also can also share with you that Anthony also requires some visualization tool to be implemented in the database in order to resolve this question about which is the number, how many fields are already collected for these data sets and so on. To resolve this, we had previously a software named Tableau, but it was not used very for different partners. And now the Work Package 3 is building a new visualization tool that I hope it will be ready in the next days, because I have some proofs. Okay, it looks, let's say, it is not as spectacular as you can imagine for a software. This is because it is let's say it is not a commercial software, but it is something. It is a tool in which you can visualize. Okay, for this for ALL we have now, let's say, 8,000 cases. For those 8,500 with age and sex and so on, so on. So you can have this visualization tool in I think very soon. Always in aggregate data, not in the different data providers, because it is the only way in which we cannot identify, and this is really very, very important for all of us to work with aggregate data.
But eventually we will be able to look at, we'll be able to do the analysis by different data providers, presumably.
Yes.
Yeah.
By request.
By request.
Not open. Because it is, there are also pharma who is providing data, and we can you cannot identify Pfizer data provided by Ali Farsad, for instance. So it is important to keep in mind that we are a public-private partnership.
Sure.
Maybe for the public partners there is no problem to visualize one data and the other one, but for one it is also very important.
Because for quite a lot of analysis, in order to get the quality that Joseph was talking about, we will have to have that level of detail to know that they were on a particular clinical trial. Otherwise, the results will be uninterpretable.
Yeah, to split the real world from the clinical trial and so on.
Yeah.
I think for the data use, a couple of things. We are going to submit our Innovate trial data, hopefully by the end of this year. So that is going to come in. In return, we have also we have put in 2 research proposals for the ALL data. I think it will be good, as you mentioned, as some of you mentioned, that it will be good to separate out, not necessarily by providers, but clinical trial versus real world. That will be quite interesting if there is a possibility there. Now, the question I had, just to make sure, so the research proposals that we submitted, and hopefully they will get accepted and vetted. So for the analysis, I'm guessing, Professor Moorman, the way that you talked, it's not GMV actually doing the analysis and sending us back the data tables. Like, we have to find somebody.
Yeah.
Anna's shaking her head. Okay.
Well, not
so we have to find somebody. Okay. That's the part I didn't know. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Now you can collaborate in the analysis. You can find, but also we can provide from the Work Package 1. We can provide some basic tools for the analysis. So we are ready to do that. In fact, we are doing this job in collaboration with Charité for the data analysis in AML. So it is quite not easy, but I think we are ready to do that. And I think our informaticians already met Anthony a couple of days ago.
Yes, I met.
There,
Yeah.
and I think is okay. So what maybe we cannot do it. Well, I'm usually working with ALL patients, so it is for me it's familiar. Yeah. It's not in Hodgkin lymphoma. So it is quite important to know which are the questions, which are the analytics that you are aiming to do in this for this study. Also, it is also important, and I very much appreciate the idea from Anthony to also involve someone from his university who can provide additional, let's say, additional background for data analytics. But it is something that we can do, and at any in any case and at any time we can also ask Work Package 5 for help.
Good. Okay.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for your questions and your input. And hopefully we'll be in touch soon. Take care.